In this video, we talk about Amazon Vendor Central. We compare Vendor Central with Seller Central, and we also talk about hybrid model where seller is using the seller account and the vendor account. So you will hear a lot of useful information. You will hear some tips when and how to become a vendor. Is it worth for you? And my guest today is Carina McLeod from e-commerce nurse. She works with sellers and vendors, and actually in the past she also worked at the vendor team at Amazon directly in UK. So enjoy this video and don't forget to subscribe below to the YouTube channel of Orange Klik and click the notification bell as well, because here we talk to different Amazon experts, software providers and event organizers. So hello Carina, it's nice to have you here. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us how you help Amazon sellers?
Yeah, of course, and thank you for letting me be on your show today. I'm Carina McLeod and I am the founder and CEO of E-commerce Nurse. We're an Amazon-focused agency where we work with both Amazon vendors and sellers in North America and Europe and help them grow their business on Amazon through account management, marketing projects and consulting. I myself have been in the Amazon space for over 15 years. So spent 7 years working for Amazon within vendor management in the UK. And then the last 8 years I've been working with both sellers and vendors with the business e-commerce nurse and also consulting for a number of brands across the globe.
And as far as I remember, you have a lot of experience about Vendor Central, and this is what we will talk today. So we'll go through the differences between the vendor and seller accounts, and we'll explore the possibilities for sellers to switch to vendors and maybe vice versa. So I know that you prepared some slides. Shall we jump into them right now?
Yeah, so there's always this question out there of whether or not a business should be a seller or a vendor on Amazon or both. And many businesses ask that question. And first off, there's the step back as in what is each of those, because sometimes it can be a bit muddy in terms of having a clearer understanding of the different ways in which you can sell on Amazon. And so I'm going to look at each of those and then talk about each of them, the seller and vendor, but then also this hybrid, which is a word that's thrown around a lot these days in the Amazon industry. So first off, if we talk about then what is an Amazon vendor? So Amazon vendor is also known as 1P, first party. And really what you are, when you're a vendor selling on Amazon, you take on this role as a manufacturer. You could also be a wholesaler or a distributor. And the reason being is that you are selling your products directly to Amazon. You're not selling your products directly to the end consumer. The end consumer will buy your products, but effectively you're taking on a wholesale relationship with Amazon, like you would if you were selling to other stores like Walmart, Tesco, and so forth. So it's a typical, really a traditional way, the old traditional way of working with bricks and mortar, that style relationship. So Amazon is the customer, which then means that Amazon, of course, manages the whole inventory and the customer service. So Amazon decides how much inventory they want, and they make that decision as to, they raise purchase orders based on the stock they believe that they will sell for your products. And also they manage the after sales or the whole customer journey when it comes to customer service and returns as well. And another thing that they do is they also control the price and the listings, and that being because effectively they're buying that inventory, they pay for the goods, and really they then own those goods. So they can decide what's the retail price that they want to sell the product at. They can then decide and then control that content on the product pages. Now, of course, when it comes to Amazon, you're providing Amazon with everything in terms of content, but at the end of the day, when you work with Amazon as a vendor, effectively they have the last say, and vendors do find that where Amazon start tweaking their content because they have purchase that inventory and then taking ownership. And then when you are a vendor, you sell via the platform, which is known as Vendor Central. Now, often businesses are not sure when they look at competitors or other brands selling on Amazon as to understand how do you differentiate, or how do you know who is selling what. And a key example here is this is a product that we know is sold by Amazon, because effectively on the product detail page, it will highlight that the product is dispatched and sold from Amazon. So that's a clear indicator that this relationship with this product, of course, this is naturally an Amazon product, but this is sold and owned by Amazon. Now, the question then often comes in is why be a vendor? Now, because you're taking on this wholesale relationship as a vendor, this means that you are, the idea is that Amazon starts purchasing in quantity. Yeah, they're not ordering in single units. Now, it might be that you've got a relationship where Amazon is. If you have got that relationship, you might want to review that, because that's definitely not going to be economically viable when you're selling a product to Amazon at a wholesale price. So the idea is that they purchase orders, inventory in volume. Now, volume is a term that could mean many different things. Some businesses are expecting Amazon to order in pallets from day one. Other businesses are aware that that might not be the case, and they're ordering in cartons or case packs. But the idea is that they're ordering in a certain quantity that makes it viable for your business. Now, one thing to highlight here from an expectation point of view when working with Amazon is that Amazon doesn't have a warehouse where they're buying huge amount of inventory and leaving it there for 6 months as storage. What they do is they buy little and often. So it's you'll find that you're getting purchase orders from Amazon on a weekly or even twice a week basis, because the idea is Amazon has a fulfillment center. So what goes in goes out almost immediately, that they're not sitting on loads of stock. And that often results in smaller orders, but more frequent orders as well. Now, as I mentioned, we're talking about inventory. So of course, being a vendor is great in the sense that Amazon manages your inventory. You don't have to think about how much inventory to send to Amazon. Amazon is placing those orders, and in most cases giving you a forecast. Now, that forecast is sometimes questionable if you don't have a really good if your inventory or your sales fluctuate greatly, then the forecasts probably aren't that great. But if you have a very sort of static business, predictable business, then the forecast can often help you. Now, Amazon also manages the whole ordering process, the whole returns, customer service. So if you're a business that's very wholesale orientated, you're not necessarily set up for direct to consumer, then this model works very, very well for those businesses. Now, another key reason why businesses become vendors is it does actually can open up doors to new initiatives and programs. So, for example, Amazon Fresh or Amazon Prime Now, different programs that Amazon often start within the vendor side. And so often if you're a vendor and Amazon is looking to launch a new program, you might then find that you receive an invitation for that, which is definitely an incentive. And another reason why businesses decide to become a vendor is because they don't compete on the buy box, as in Amazon does that on their behalf. So they don't have to start trying and playing around with pricing, because that's Amazon's automated systems are already doing that. The reason why some businesses might not want to compete on the buy box is partly down to not wanting to, because they may have retailers they sell the product to. They don't want to be seen engaging in price wars with their own customers. And so let Amazon do it and then hide, basically, and put the blame on Amazon, often is the case with the buy box. But no, it's about businesses that do have good relationships with their retailers, not wanting to start competing with their products, with people that they're already selling to. Now, if I were doing this presentation a few years ago, I would probably have a chart that highlights the benefits of vendor versus seller. Today, it's very much an even level playing field, as in seller has advanced a lot, and we'll go on to seller shortly. And it's advanced a lot in the sense that a lot of the marketing tools that were only available on vendor, such as A+ content, brand stores, sponsored brands, all these additional features that made businesses almost want to become a vendor, are no longer the case. It's even level. If you're a brand owner with a registered trademark, then you have access to everything on seller. What that then does is it makes it very much an even level playing field. So the only reason why businesses would then be a vendor or a seller is often down to their distribution setup, and how they want to grow their business, and the whole infrastructure that they have to manage orders and everything. And then just moving on to seller. So what's seller on Amazon now? I imagine probably a lot of people viewing this, the question is more about understanding the difference of vendor, because a number of businesses are probably already a seller looking to take that step over to vendor. Now, Amazon seller, also known as 3P, third party, you're effectively taking on a retailer role. Now, you could be a manufacturer, you could be a wholesaler or distributor, but on Amazon, you're effectively a retailer because you're selling your product directly to the end consumer on Amazon. So Amazon's customer is effectively your customer, and you're using the Amazon platform to sell your products, which is very different to selling as a vendor, where Amazon is basically the seller of record and they're selling your product. They've already purchased that inventory from you, well, depending on payment terms, but they've purchased it from you and they're selling directly to the customer. So as a seller, you then start managing a lot more. You then have to manage your inventory, you manage your customer service. Now, of course, if you go fulfillment by Amazon, FBA, then Amazon is going to take that strain away from you. So they will then manage your inventory and customer service. But even if you do FBA, there is still an element of where you need to decide how much inventory you send to Amazon and have in Amazon's fulfillment centers. And still customer questions might come your way that are non-order related, which you would need to manage. You would then control your own pricing. So you then decide completely what retail to sell at the product at. And of course, you then control your product listings, the content and everything, as long as it is in line with Amazon's policies. If not, you might find not necessarily Amazon changing things, but Amazon giving you warnings that your content needs to be changed. But effectively, you're making that decision as to what content you want showing on Amazon. And then, of course, like Vendor Central, Seller Central is the platform that you'll be selling on. And again, a prime example here of where I've got in the box over here on the right hand side, you know that this is then a seller because of course it's fulfillment by Amazon, and then it's sold by the name of that seller on Amazon. So then you're able to highlight the key differences between the two. Now, the key reason businesses will then, if a business has the option to decide whether they become a vendor or seller, they may have the setup, they have a wholesale setup and a direct to consumer setup. Why a business would then choose seller over vendor might be that they want to control their own pricing, because as I said, as a vendor, Amazon sets the retail prices. Some businesses don't like that. Some businesses don't trust Amazon. They see Amazon as a bit of a discount retailer. And so they fear that Amazon could start discounting their products. And so you as a seller don't have to get involved in that. You effectively choose what price you want to sell that product at. Again, some businesses want to manage their own orders. They want to manage the inventory. They don't want to pass that on to any other business. They have a good setup. They have a direct consumer business already, and they want to manage that themselves and have all that control over their product listings. Now, you've seen a lot here about why a business remains a seller and doesn't want to take that step to vendor, or a vendor might want to be a seller, is down to really having that controlling their product listings, controlling their pricing, controlling the inventory and orders, as well as then having that direct contact with the end consumer. Because when you're selling to Amazon on vendor, you don't know who the end consumer is, because you're not engaging with that customer, because that's Amazon's customer, not your customer. Amazon's your customer when you're a vendor. But when you become a seller, you have that ability to make direct contact with that end consumer, the customer on Amazon. Now, of course, Amazon has its terms of service, and it is quite restrictive in terms of what you can and can't do in terms of contacting customers, but you still have that door open. It's not completely closed or hidden, or not hidden, visible compared to vendor. And greater margins. Often you'll find when you're a vendor, you have to offer products to Amazon at a wholesale price. So you're already giving Amazon a reduction on your pricing. If you're then selling as a seller, you're obviously selling at full retail price. So you're able to then get greater margin. Now, this isn't always the case. We speak with some businesses that actually their business is more profitable on vendor than seller. And that's often because they have low price point items that the FBA fees and everything don't make sense for. Or it could be a number of different factors, but often you'll find that seller can have greater margins because you can play around with the retail price and decide what margin you want to obtain. Now, lastly, you've got a hybrid. So what is a hybrid? A hybrid is effectively when you're basically a vendor and seller. So you're taking on both this wholesale relationship, selling product to Amazon. You're also selling product as a seller direct to the end consumer. So effectively, you've got access to two accounts, Seller Central and Vendor Central, and you're managing your assortment between the two platforms. Now, this requires a lot more, I'll go back to this. This requires a lot more of a strategic approach. It's not the fact that you just open a seller account and a vendor account, mirror exactly what you've got in your vendor account into your seller account, because effectively, there's a question of what's the point. Okay, you might have backup inventory if Amazon doesn't order enough on vendor, and so forth. Or a prime example was with COVID, where Amazon wasn't ordering or letting you send in more inventory. You have more backup solutions. But what you want to avoid is just competing with your own listings and just mirroring it. A lot of businesses manage the assortment in a very more strategic way, as in, okay, singles don't work on vendor because they're not, Amazon are complaining that the products don't bring them any margin. And so you decide to sell the singles on seller, but you offer Amazon multi-packs on vendor, and they start ordering in case pack quantities and so forth on vendor. Or it might be that you sell to Amazon on vendor your inventory that's always in stock because Amazon's placing orders every week, but the products that you have limited stock available, you only sell on seller. Or it might be that you find that Seller Central is good for launching your products that are more price sensitive when they've just come to market. So you might not want to offer your new products, your effectively your babies that you want to nurture at the start. You might want to nurture them and it gets sales accelerated on seller. And then when they get to a certain life cycle, you might then want to move them over to vendor. So there's a lot more thought behind why you would take a hybrid approach, as opposed to just going, yeah, I want to be a vendor and seller and just have all my products on there. And then, of course, what's right for my business? A lot then depends on overall with your business model, as I mentioned. And a couple of points here is really about, are you actually set up for wholesale? Are you set up for direct to consumer? Because that answer will completely eliminate one versus the other. Another thing is, if you are a business and you sell to loads of major retailers, let's say in the UK, and you then say you want to be a seller and not a vendor, you might even find that Amazon might challenge you on that, because effectively, if you're selling to other retailers, you've got a wholesale setup. So why wouldn't you sell to Amazon? And so there's lots of things to think about. And, you know, really with your business setup is, are you set up to manage wholesale? Are you set up to sell direct to consumer? And if you aren't, is that something that you want to do in the future? Because just because you're not set up now doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to do that in 6 months, a year's time. It may be that you want to get that logistical set up, and that's your 3-year goal. But this is something that's key, that you should be thinking about when distinguishing the two. So I've done a lot of talking there, which I'm good at doing, I must say, in terms of giving you those listeners a clear distinction between two models, which in all honesty it can get a bit muddy and confusing when talking about selling on Amazon.
Thank you very much, Carina. It was a nice overview, but I have a few questions. So in the past, vendors got additional tools which were not available in Seller Central. But now we know that sellers are getting more and more of the previously vendor exclusive tools. Can you tell us what are the tools which vendors are getting right now, which are not available for sellers?
To be honest, there's not really. The only key difference in terms of the tools are more promotions. So you get access to what they call the best deals, which are like a 2-week promotion that you don't get within Seller Central, or you do as a seller if you have an account manager. So you have to be a certain size. But what we're finding is near enough everything is now available. So if we look at reviews, the Vine review program has now moved over to Seller. But in actual fact, you have to pay for Vine on vendor at the moment. It's free on Seller. Now, this happened as well years ago with A+ content. You used to pay for A+ content on vendor. It moved over to Seller for free. And then everybody was like, well, I might as well set up a Seller account, get my listing set up on Seller, and you know, everybody's going to find a loophole to avoid these fees. And then it became free. So it's interesting to, all these different tools then seem to be available on the two. And also if we look at advertising, so sponsored brand stores were always only available for vendors. They became available for sellers, but also almost had an upgrade and was integrated more with advertising. Sponsored brands, the old headline search ads are now available, and display ads, and more. So really there's no reason why a business should decide to become a vendor for the tools, if that makes sense, because the tools are almost the same on both platforms, if not better on Seller, because you don't have to pay for them.
All right. So I know that part of your client base are vendors, and probably you saw some sellers transforming into vendors. When you are a vendor, Amazon takes care of your listing. So in that means that they might they might make it worse, the whole listing, probably in some cases. So you are losing control. So have you seen cases where sellers transformed into vendor and their sales increased, like their business really boosted?
Yeah, we've seen both, to be honest. We've seen it where sellers have moved to vendor and their businesses increased, more so because they started to see these bulk orders coming through. And as I say bulk, need to be careful with how I use that, because people could imagine these huge orders, but larger orders than they were receiving on Seller. And so we've seen businesses actually prefer, because that's the model that they want. It's more economical for them to ship in packs in that way once a week to Amazon, as opposed to working on the seller side. So we've seen that be effective for them. But often it's because they've already accelerated the business to a certain level on seller. To just all of a sudden become a vendor without having any momentum on the platform is a challenge, because Amazon has an automated ordering system, and their ordering system is based on demand. If they can't see demand, or there's nobody's been looking at the listings previously or anything, it becomes a bit of a tough one, because how do you get people to the listings if there's no inventory? And Amazon isn't ordering inventory because they can't see people going to the listings. So Amazon do have initiatives on the vendor side, such as the Born to Run program. The Born to Run program is where you then say to Amazon, can you order in X amount of inventory that covers 10 weeks of sales? And Amazon, if they agree, will order in that inventory. And if it sells, great, you've helped get that product available. But if it doesn't, they'll return the inventory. So Amazon is aware of that challenge. So yeah, if you've got that momentum already, it can work. Now, we've seen it not work as well, where businesses have moved from seller to vendor, and they're sold the dream, get all their listings set up on vendor. Next minute they know their product images have changed, their titles have changed, all these lovely optimized product pages from seller have completely changed. And it becomes a headache because they've got to clean it all up. And it takes time because of the system in the back end overriding other bits of data. And you've got to then get the catalog team to override it. And this is a very common issue, which you do get there. We've got through those challenges with our clients. But during that period, that can impact sales as well, because there's this period where these product listings were doing so great, had lovely images and everything. And next minute, you've got a product image of a hand holding a box, like a grey hand. And and it just looks terrible. And I can never understand for the life of me why Amazon still uses those images, but they do. So that's when that requires work. And sometimes some sellers are like, is it worth all that work, or do we revert back? So sometimes sellers that move to vendor have reverted back to seller almost a bit too quick because of that period. So you've always need to make sure that you've got that backup strategy if you are taking that jump over to vendor, and aware that there could be an element of disruption. So you would probably want to time that correctly, or start vendor with new products or listings that aren't already in seller. So it might be multi-packs, or just being a bit more creative to get familiar with the platform, as opposed to jumping completely into vendor. I would say be cautious about that, because there are some repercussions of doing that.
Mm-hmm. So talking about hybrid sellers, what is the process? So basically the seller has to wait for the invitation and then they decide what they sell on vendor?
Yeah, so that's the only point with vendor, is that vendor is invite only. And vendor, it's like the Golden Gates, become a bit more firmly shut these days, where Amazon is a bit more very selective on who they let in. And a lot of that goes back to what I was mentioning about, as in, do you have a wholesale relationship? Are you selling to major retailers? Because if you're not selling to major retailers in the UK, why would you want to be a vendor on Amazon? Or it probably doesn't make sense. You're not probably that size yet. So they'd ask a lot of questions anyway. It may be that you reach out to them and they want that information. Or if they see your brand in many different places, not only on performing well on Amazon seller, they might see it in other stores. They might then approach you and want to invite you to the platform. So that's, Amazon vendor can be sometimes a tough one. The amount of emails that we get on a weekly basis going, can you get me a vendor account? It's interesting.
But your answer is you cannot unless it's invited, right?
Yeah, you need an invite, or working with agencies or freelancers that have that are working with Amazon, that often have direct connection with the business development team that might then be able to open up that conversation. It's not to say it's not about contacts necessarily. It's just there is a team that are recruiting new vendors. You know, there's a team that recruit new sellers. It's whether or not you are on their list, or would they want you on their list, really. So sometimes you can sometimes reach out to them and they might be open to have a conversation at least.
And talking about workload, let's say someone got invited and they decide to try the hybrid method. Is there a lot of like additional work to manage comparing, you know, to just seller central?
Yeah, definitely. Well, you're managing 2 accounts. So you then need to be monitoring 2. Now, monitoring vendor is different to monitoring seller, because of seller, you need to monitor your seller feedback, your buyer messages. Those are things that you don't have to do on vendor because you don't have that connection with the end consumer. So that takes that away. But the part on vendor is just there's a lot more admin with receiving the purchase orders, sending those purchase orders, making sure you send the shipment notifications, printing all the shipping labels out, raising invoices, the accounting. So there's quite a bit of administration needed on vendor. So you definitely, if you're already tight on resource on seller, then you need to question that on vendor, because that's you're doubling basically the work involved.
All right, all clear. Thank you very much, Carina. And finally, could you tell us how can people find you and how can you help them?
Yeah, sure. So if you're interested, you might be questioning whether to become a vendor, or you might just need support with your seller or vendor business on Amazon and looking to grow your sales further, or to even get set up, then come to us at ecommercenurse.com. If you go to contact us within our website, one of our team will reach out and set up a call and talk with you further about what support you need.
Thank you very much and good luck in your business. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
I hope this video was useful and you could decide and see if Vendor Central is a good fit for your Amazon business. Don't forget to subscribe below to the YouTube channel of Orange Klik. And also, if you want to learn more about Amazon, watch other videos provided by Orange Klik. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.